Before the first note is even sung, before the lights fully settle on the stage, before anyone in the audience realizes they are about to witness history, there is a small boy standing alone behind a curtain, hands trembling, whispering a promise to himself that no one else can hear. If I get this chance, I will sing for everyone who never had one. And before this story ends, I want you to feel what he felt, to stand where he stood. And if this story touches your heart even once, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this are meant to be shared, not forgotten. His name is Miguel Santos, a 12-year-old boy from a quiet coastal town in the Philippines where mornings begin with the sound of roosters, waves kissing the shore, and radios crackling with old songs. Miguel's home is a small wooden house patched together with love more than money. His father is a fisherman who leaves before sunrise and returns with tired eyes and empty hands more often than full nets. His mother sells homemade snacks outside a bus terminal, smiling even when her feet ache. Music was never a luxury in their home, it was a refuge. When Miguel was 5, he learned to sing not from lessons, but from listening to his mother hum while cooking, to neighbors singing karaoke late into the night, and to the national anthem played every Monday morning at school. Lupang Hinirang wasn't just a song to him, it was a heartbeat, a reminder that even small voices belong to something bigger. Miguel's childhood was shaped by responsibility early on. After school, instead of playing games, he helped his mother carry supplies or watched over his younger sister. Sometimes, when the electricity went out, he would sing softly in the dark to calm her fears. Those were the moments when his voice changed, when something deeper emerged, pure, aching, honest. Teachers noticed. Neighbors paused to listen. But talent doesn't erase poverty, and dreams don't pay for bus fare. When Miguel first saw America's Got Talent on a neighbor's television, he laughed at the idea. That stage felt like another planet. Simon Cowell felt like a myth. The idea of auditioning came after a devastating storm swept through their town, destroying boats, homes, and hopes. Miguel's father lost his fishing boat. For weeks, the family survived on help from others. One night, Miguel stood at the shoreline, singing into the wind, and his mother heard him. She didn't say anything at first. She just cried. The next morning, she told him, "If your voice can make me feel strong again, maybe it can do that for others too." That was the moment everything changed. They borrowed money. They traveled for hours. Miguel stood in long lines with hundreds of others, some confident, some scared, all dreaming. When it was his turn, he didn't sing a pop song. He didn't sing something trendy. He sang Lupang Hinirang. The room went silent. Judges looked at each other. People wiped tears. A video of that audition spread online, crossing oceans, landing on screens in places Miguel had only seen on maps. Soon after, an email arrived. He was invited to perform on AGT. America was overwhelming. The lights were brighter than anything Miguel had known. The stage felt endless. Backstage, he clutched a small Philippine flag his sister had sewn for him. When the host asked how he felt, Miguel smiled shyly and said, "I'm nervous, but I'm singing for my country." The audience applauded politely, not yet knowing what was coming. Simon Cowell leaned back, arms crossed, curious but reserved. When the first note left Miguel's mouth, something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was pure. The kind of sound that doesn't ask for attention but commands it anyway. As he sang about the land of his birth, his voice carried every sacrifice, every struggle, every silent prayer whispered in the dark. The audience leaned forward. Judges stopped taking notes. Simon's expression changed, his usual skepticism melting into something raw and unguarded. By the second verse, people were standing. Some placed hands over their hearts, even if they didn't understand the words. They understood the feeling. The song swelled, Miguel's voice soaring higher, stronger, fearless. And when he reached the final note, holding it with a strength that seemed impossible for someone so young, the room erupted. The applause wasn't polite anymore. It was thunderous. People were crying openly. Simon Cowell stood up slowly, his eyes shining, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke, voice thick with emotion, saying this was why the show existed, to remind the world of the power of truth and courage. Miguel didn't win the competition that night. He didn't need to. His performance traveled across the world, uniting people who had never heard the anthem before but felt its soul.
Donations poured in for his family in town.
His father bought a new boat. His sister returned to school.
Miguel kept singing, not chasing fame, but purpose.
He performed at schools, at charity events, at gatherings where people needed hope more than entertainment. Years later, Miguel would stand on another stage, older but still carrying that same flag in his heart, reminding audiences that greatness doesn't come from where you start, but from what you stand for. And every time someone asks how it all began, he smiles and says it began with a promise made behind a curtain, to sing for those who couldn't. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that one voice can change everything, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere right now, another child is standing in the dark, waiting for the courage to sing. The night after Miguel's performance, he couldn't sleep. The hotel room was quiet, but his mind was louder than the applause he still heard ringing in his ears. He replayed every second, the lights, the faces, the moment Simon Cowell stood up. He kept asking himself if it had really happened or if he would wake up back in his small wooden house, listening to waves and roosters. He held the little flag his sister had sewn and whispered a thank you, not to the judges or the audience, but to the people back home who believed in him when belief was all they had. Back in the Philippines, the entire town had gathered around a single television at the barangay hall. Old men who rarely showed emotion wiped their eyes. Mothers hugged their children tighter. For a few minutes, no one cared about bills, broken boats, or storms yet to come. They felt seen. Miguel's voice had crossed oceans and returned as hope. His parents sat quietly after the broadcast ended, holding hands, understanding that their son's life, and perhaps their own, had changed forever. But fame did not arrive gently. Messages flooded in. Interviews were requested. People wanted Miguel to sing pop songs, to change his style, to become something easier to market. There were moments when he felt lost, when the noise threatened to drown out the reason he sang in the first place. One evening, overwhelmed and tired, he told his mother he didn't know if he was strong enough. She listened carefully, then said softly, "Remember why you sang. Not for applause, not for judges, but for truth. If you keep that, you'll never lose yourself." Miguel returned to the AGT stage for the results show, not as a contestant desperate to win, but as a boy who had already found his voice. When asked what the song meant to him, he spoke simply, saying it was about loving where you come from and believing that even small dreams matter. The audience applauded again, not because he sang, but because he reminded them of something real in a world often filled with noise. Life after the show was different, but not easier. Miguel continued his education, balancing schoolwork with performances. He used his platform to raise funds for communities affected by typhoons, singing not under bright television lights but in evacuation centers, churches, and open fields. Each time, people cried, not because he was famous, but because he stood with them, one of them, using his gift as a bridge rather than a ladder. There were setbacks too. His voice changed as he grew older. Some critics said the magic was gone. Miguel felt fear again, the same fear he felt behind the curtain before his first performance. But this time, he understood something deeper. His worth was not tied to perfection. It was tied to sincerity. He learned to adapt, to train, to respect his changing voice without forcing it to be what it once was. Growth, he realized, was another form of courage. Years passed, and Miguel was invited to sing Lupang Hinirang at an international cultural event. As he stood on stage, older now, steadier, he looked out at a crowd filled with different flags, different languages, different lives. Yet the silence before he sang felt familiar. When his voice rose, it carried not just the story of a Filipino boy on AGT, but the story of anyone who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told their dream was too small. After the final note, the applause was long and heartfelt. Miguel bowed his head, not in pride, but in gratitude. He knew that his journey was never about one show or one judge. It was about connection. About reminding people that authenticity can still move the world. If you're watching this right now and wondering whether your voice matters, let Miguel's story be your answer. It does. Whether your stage is a classroom, a street corner, a small room, or a massive arena, your truth has power. And if stories like this inspire you, motivate you, or simply remind you to believe again, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because every share, every like, every subscription helps keep these stories alive, and somewhere, someone needs to hear this one today. The morning sun rose gently over Miguel's hometown, painting the sea in soft gold, but nothing felt the same anymore. Children ran through narrow streets pretending to be on big stages, singing into imaginary microphones. Old radios replayed clips of Miguel's performance, his voice echoing from homes made of wood and tin.
His story had become everyone's story.
Yet thousands of miles away, Miguel sat quietly on his hotel bed in America, staring at his reflection, wondering how a simple boy who once sang to calm his sister in the dark had become a voice heard around the world. When he finally returned home, the welcome was overwhelming. The airport doors opened, and cheers erupted like a wave crashing into shore. People held handmade signs, some barely readable, all filled with pride. Miguel's mother cried openly, his father stood taller than ever before, and Miguel felt something tighten in his chest. This love was heavier than any trophy. He realized that inspiration came with responsibility. From that moment on, he promised himself he would never let fame make him forget where he came from. School was different now. Teachers smiled differently. Classmates looked at him with admiration, but also distance. Some expected him to be extraordinary all the time. Others whispered that he had gotten lucky. Miguel struggled with that pressure. He still had homework. He still got tired. He still felt scared before performances. One afternoon, after a particularly hard day, he walked alone to the shore and sang softly to the ocean, just like he used to. No cameras. No applause. Just honesty. That was when he remembered, singing wasn't about proving anything. It was about releasing what words couldn't carry. As months passed, invitations arrived from all over the world. Concert halls. Charity events. Cultural celebrations. Miguel didn't say yes to everything. He chose carefully, guided by his parents and his own instincts. He wanted his voice to heal, not just entertain. At a benefit concert for storm victims, he sang in front of people who had lost everything. When he finished, a woman hugged him and said, "For 3 minutes, I forgot my pain." That mattered more than any standing ovation, but the journey wasn't always gentle. Online comments could be cruel. Some said he was overrated. Others questioned his future. When his voice cracked during a rehearsal as it began to change with age, fear returned. He worried the magic was gone. He worried he would disappoint everyone who believed in him. One night, he confessed this fear to his father. His father listened quietly, then said, "A real voice isn't about hitting notes. It's about touching hearts. That never disappears." Those words stayed with Miguel longer than any applause ever could. Years went by, and Miguel grew not just taller, but wiser. He studied music seriously, learning technique, breath control, and discipline. He learned that talent alone is fragile without effort. He learned patience. He learned humility. Sometimes, when practice felt exhausting, he remembered the boy behind the curtain, whispering a promise to himself. That memory pushed him forward. One day, Miguel was invited back to America's Got Talent, not to compete, but to perform as a guest. Walking onto that familiar stage felt surreal. The lights were the same, but he wasn't. He was stronger now, steadier. Simon Cowell watched from the judges' table, a small smile forming as Miguel began to sing. This time, it wasn't about shock. It was about growth. The audience listened with respect, not surprise. When the song ended, the applause was quieter but deeper, filled with understanding. Simon stood again, nodding, his eyes reflecting pride rather than disbelief. After the show, a young contestant approached Miguel backstage, hands shaking, voice barely steady. "I'm scared," the child said. Miguel knelt down, looked into his eyes, and said, "So was I." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's singing anyway. In that moment, Miguel realized his greatest achievement wasn't the performance that made Simon Cowell cry, it was becoming someone who could give courage to others. Miguel's life settled into a rhythm of learning, singing, and giving back. He helped build a small music program in his hometown so other children could learn without cost. He visited schools, not to be admired, but to listen. He told students that dreams don't have deadlines, and success doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like persistence on quiet days when no one is watching. One evening, during a community concert, the power suddenly went out.
Darkness fell.
The crowd murmured nervously.
Miguel stepped forward and began to sing without a microphone.
His voice filled the night, raw and unfiltered.
People lifted their phone lights. Stars appeared above.
In that moment, it felt like everything had come full circle, from singing in darkness for his sister to singing in darkness for an entire community. When the song ended, there was silence, followed by tears, that applause that felt endless. Looking back, Miguel understood that his story was never about winning a competition or impressing judges.
It was about authenticity.
About staying true when the world tries to reshape you.
About honoring your roots while reaching for the sky.
His journey proved that a single voice, when filled with sincerity, can cross borders, heal wounds, and remind people of their shared humanity. And if you're watching this right now, maybe you're doubting yourself.
Maybe you feel unseen. Maybe your dream feels too big for where you come from. Remember Miguel. Remember that greatness doesn't start on a stage, it starts in quiet moments when you choose to believe anyway. And if this story inspired you, moved you, or gave you even a spark of hope, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because every voice deserves to be heard, and your support helps bring stories like this to the world. Long after the applause faded and the cameras shut off, Miguel sat alone near a quiet window, watching city lights flicker like distant stars. For the first time since stepping onto the AGT stage, he allowed himself to breathe. He thought about his hometown, about salty air and wooden floors, about nights when the power went out and his sister curled beside him, asking him to sing. He never imagined that those simple moments would lead him here, carrying the weight of a nation's pride on his small shoulders. Back home, life moved forward in small but meaningful ways. His father repaired his fishing nets with renewed hope. His mother smiled more easily, no longer hiding her exhaustion. Neighbors spoke of Miguel not as a celebrity, but as their son, their brother, their proof that dreams could survive even in the hardest conditions. When Miguel finally returned, there were no grand stages, only open arms and quiet tears. That welcome reminded him that success means nothing if it pulls you away from your roots. As time passed, Miguel faced a new challenge: expectation. People wanted him to always sound the same, to always create the same magic. But his voice was changing, his emotions deeper, his understanding of the world more complex. There were days he felt afraid that he would disappoint everyone. On those days, he returned to the ocean, letting the waves absorb his doubts as he sang softly, not to impress, but to remember who he was. Miguel chose to sing for purpose rather than praise. He performed at schools, shelters, and small community gatherings. He listened to stories of loss and resilience, realizing that everyone carried a song inside them, even if they never sang it aloud. Music became his way of saying, "You're not alone." And people felt that sincerity in every note. One evening, during a simple outdoor performance, rain began to fall. Instead of stopping, Miguel continued singing. The crowd stayed, soaked but smiling, some crying openly. In that moment, Miguel understood something powerful: real connection doesn't need perfection. It needs honesty. His voice, once a whisper in the dark, had become a light for others navigating their own storms. Looking ahead, Miguel knew his journey was still unfolding. He would keep learning, keep growing, and keep singing, not to chase applause, but to share truth. His story was never about a single performance or a famous judge's tears. It was about courage, roots, and the quiet strength of staying true to yourself. If this story touched your heart, remember that your voice matters too. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every story shared keeps hope alive, and somewhere, someone is waiting to be inspired by yours. Late at night, when the world finally grew quiet, Miguel often thought about how far a single song had carried him. He remembered the small room where he used to sing softly so his sister wouldn't be afraid of the dark, never knowing that the same voice would one day reach millions. Fame had come quickly, but Miguel stayed grounded by the lessons of home, humility, gratitude, and love. Back in his hometown, people didn't see him as a star. They saw the same boy who greeted elders respectfully and helped carry groceries. That kept him steady. Whenever pressure crept in, he returned to the ocean, letting the sound of the waves remind him why he sang in the first place. Music was never about applause, it was about connection. Miguel continued to sing not for trophies, but for meaning. At schools, community gatherings, and charity events where hope mattered more than perfection. His voice changed as he grew, but his purpose stayed the same. He learned that true strength isn't about staying the same forever,
but about growing without losing yourself. His journey proved that even the smallest voice can create ripples across the world. Before the stage lights turned on, before the announcer spoke his name, before the cameras found his face, there was a boy standing alone in silence, pressing his palms together as if holding his courage in place. His heart was beating so loudly he thought the judges might hear it. In that moment, nothing else existed, not the massive theater, not the millions watching from their homes, not even the possibility of failure. There was only a promise echoing in his chest: sing with truth. Sing with heart. And before this story ends, I want you to feel that promise too. So if this journey touches you even once, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to live on. Miguel Santos was 12 years old, small for his age, with eyes that carried more experience than most adults. He came from a quiet coastal town in the Philippines where life was simple but rarely easy. His home was a modest wooden house, built piece by piece over the years, standing close enough to the sea that salt clung to everything. His father was a fisherman who woke before dawn, hoping the ocean would be kind. His mother sold homemade snacks near a bus terminal, her smile hiding tired feet and long days. Money was always short, but love was never lacking. Music entered Miguel's life naturally, not as a dream, but as a companion. He didn't learn to sing from lessons or teachers. He learned by listening. Listening to his mother hum while cooking. Listening to neighbors sing karaoke late into the night. Listening to the radio crackle with old songs when electricity allowed. And most of all, listening to Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine national anthem, played every Monday morning at school. To Miguel, it wasn't just a song. It was pride, history, struggle, and hope woven into one melody. Miguel's childhood was shaped early by responsibility. After school, he helped his mother prepare snacks or watched over his younger sister while their parents worked. On nights when storms knocked out the power, his sister would cry softly, afraid of the dark. Miguel would pull her close and sing until her breathing slowed and sleep finally came. It was during those quiet moments that something special began to form in his voice, something honest and raw that came not from technique, but from emotion. Teachers noticed first. Then neighbors. People would stop outside their house when Miguel sang, pretending to adjust sandals or check phones just to listen a little longer. Some said he had a gift. Others said he was lucky. But Miguel didn't think of it that way. To him, singing was as natural as breathing. It was how he released feelings he didn't know how to explain. The idea of America's Got Talent felt impossible at first. Miguel only saw it on a neighbor's television, crowded by people standing shoulder to shoulder. The stage looked unreal. The judges felt like legends. Simon Cowell, especially, seemed untouchable. Miguel laughed quietly at the thought of ever being there. Dreams like that belonged to other people, people with money, connections, confidence. Everything changed after a violent storm hit their town. Boats were destroyed. Homes were damaged. Miguel's father lost his fishing boat, the family's main source of income. Days turned heavy with uncertainty. One evening, Miguel stood near the shoreline, singing softly into the wind as waves crashed against broken wood. His mother heard him and stopped walking. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. Tears rolled down her face, not from sadness alone, but from realization. That night, she told Miguel something that would shape his life forever: your voice carries strength. Maybe it can carry us forward too. With borrowed money and borrowed hope, they applied for auditions. The journey was long and exhausting. Miguel stood in lines for hours among hundreds of hopefuls. Some were confident, some nervous, all chasing something. When it was finally his turn, Miguel made a choice that surprised everyone. He didn't sing a popular song. He didn't try to impress. He sang Lupang Hinirang. The room went still. Conversations stopped. Judges leaned forward. The song filled the space with something deeper than sound: identity, dignity, soul. When Miguel finished, there was silence before applause erupted. A clip of that audition spread online, crossing borders and oceans. People who had never heard the anthem before felt its power through his voice. And soon, an email arrived that made Miguel's hands shake. He was invited to perform on America's Got Talent. America was overwhelming. The buildings felt too tall. The streets too loud. The AGT stage felt endless. Backstage, Miguel clutched a small Philippine flag his sister had sewn for him. When the host asked how he felt, he smiled shyly and said, "I'm nervous, but I'm singing for my country." The audience applauded politely, not yet knowing what was coming. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, curious but guarded. The first note Miguel sang changed everything.
It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was pure. The kind of sound that doesn't ask for attention but demands it anyway.
As he sang, his voice carried every struggle his family had faced, every silent prayer whispered in the dark, every dream that refused to die.
People leaned forward. Some placed hands over their hearts. Simon's expression softened, his eyes glistening. By the final verse, the audience was standing.
Tears streamed freely. When Miguel held the last note, steady and fearless, the theater exploded in applause. Simon Cowell stood, visibly emotional, wiping his eyes before speaking. He said moments like this were the reason the show existed, to remind the world of honesty and courage. Miguel didn't win the competition. But he won something far greater. His performance traveled the world. Donations poured in for his family and community. His father bought a new fishing boat. Children in his town walked taller, believing more. Miguel returned home not as a celebrity, but as a symbol of possibility. Fame, however, brought new challenges. People wanted him to sing different songs, to change his style, to become easier to market. Online comments were harsh at times. As he grew older, his voice began to change, and fear returned. He worried he would disappoint everyone who believed in him. One night, he confessed this fear to his father. His father listened quietly and said, "A real voice isn't about staying the same. It's about staying true." Miguel studied music seriously, learning discipline and patience. He sang at schools, shelters, and disaster relief centers. He used his platform to help others, not elevate himself. One night, during a community concert, the power went out. Instead of stopping, Miguel sang without a microphone. Phone lights filled the darkness. People cried. It felt like coming home, to singing in the dark. Just like before. Years later, Miguel returned to the AGT stage as a guest performer. He wasn't there to shock anyone anymore. He was there to share growth. Simon Cowell smiled proudly as Miguel finished. Backstage, a nervous young contestant told Miguel he was scared. Miguel knelt and said, "So was I." Courage isn't being fearless. It's singing anyway. Miguel eventually helped build a free music program in his hometown, ensuring other children could dream without limits. He learned that success isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and meaningful. Looking back, Miguel knew his story was never about one performance or one judge. It was about staying real in a world that tries to change you. It was about honoring where you come from while believing you deserve more. If you're watching this and doubting yourself, remember Miguel. Remember that even the smallest voice can shake the world when it's filled with truth. And if this story inspired you, moved you, or gave you hope, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every voice deserves to be heard, and your support keeps these stories alive. When the theater finally emptied and the echoes of applause disappeared, Miguel stood quietly at the edge of the stage, touching the floor where his dream had taken shape. He wasn't thinking about fame or numbers or headlines. He was thinking about his sister asleep back home, about his parents watching from a small screen, about the boy he used to be who sang only to chase away fear. That boy was still inside him, steady and honest. Returning home reminded Miguel of who he truly was. The ocean air welcomed him like an old friend. Neighbors greeted him with pride, but also warmth, treating him not as a star, but as family. Life was still simple, still challenging, but hope now lived in places where doubt once settled. Miguel understood that success meant lifting others, not rising above them. As time passed, his voice matured, carrying new depth and emotion. There were moments of uncertainty, moments when he wondered if he could ever match that first magical performance. But he learned that growth doesn't erase magic, it reshapes it. Each song became less about perfection and more about truth. Miguel chose paths that mattered. He sang at schools and community events, encouraging children to believe in their own voices. He listened as much as he sang, understanding that everyone carries a story worth hearing. Music became his way of saying, "You matter."
One evening, during a small outdoor gathering, rain began to fall. Instead of stopping, Miguel sang on.
Before anyone noticed the boy on stage, before the audience settled into their seats, before the cameras adjusted their focus, there was a quiet heartbeat echoing behind the curtain. A small pair of hands were clenched together, not in fear, but in prayer. Miguel Santos closed his eyes and inhaled slowly, as if breathing in every memory that had brought him here. In that moment, he wasn't standing on the world's biggest talent stage. He was standing barefoot on warm sand, listening to waves crash against the shore of his hometown. And before this story ends, I want you to feel every step of that journey with him, so if this story moves your heart even a little, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard and shared. Miguel grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines where life moved at the rhythm of the sea. His house was modest, built from wood that creaked during storms and heat that lingered through humid nights. His father, Andres, was a fisherman who woke before dawn, pushing his small boat into the water with a silent hope that the sea would be generous. His mother, Lila, sold homemade snacks near the bus terminal, standing for hours with aching legs but never letting her smile fade. Money was always tight, but love filled every corner of their home. Music was never planned for Miguel. It arrived quietly, like rain. He learned to sing by listening to his mother humming while cooking, to old love songs playing on crackling radios, to neighbors singing karaoke with laughter and broken notes. Every Monday morning at school, the students stood straight as Lupang Hinirang played. While others waited for it to end, Miguel felt something stir inside him. The song didn't feel ordinary. It felt alive. It felt like belonging. By the age of 7, Miguel was already carrying responsibilities beyond his years. After school, he helped his mother prepare snacks and watched over his younger sister, Sofia. At night, when power outages swallowed their home in darkness, Sofia would cry softly, afraid of shadows. Miguel would sit beside her and sing until her breathing slowed and sleep took her away. Those moments shaped his voice, not with technique, but with emotion. He sang not to impress, but to comfort, and neighbors began to notice. They paused outside their home when Miguel sang, pretending to check their phones or adjust sandals. Teachers encouraged him, but encouragement alone couldn't change their reality. Singing didn't pay bills. Dreams didn't replace broken fishing nets. Miguel never imagined music could take him far. He sang because it felt natural, because silence felt heavier. Everything changed the year a violent storm hit their town. Winds destroyed boats, waves flooded homes, and hope felt washed away. Miguel's father lost his fishing boat, their only steady income. Days became filled with uncertainty. One evening, Miguel walked to the shore and sang into the wind, his voice trembling but steady. His mother heard him and stopped. She listened without interrupting. Tears rolled down her face, not from sadness alone, but from understanding. That night, she told Miguel, "Your voice carries strength. Maybe it can carry us forward." The idea of America's Got Talent felt unreal. Miguel had only seen it on a neighbor's television, crowded by people standing shoulder to shoulder. The judges felt untouchable, especially Simon Cowell. Miguel laughed at the thought. That stage belonged to another world. But with borrowed money and borrowed hope, his parents decided to try. The audition journey was exhausting. Long lines. Nervous faces. Confident smiles hiding fear. When it was Miguel's turn, the room buzzed with expectation. Most contestants chose popular songs. Miguel chose differently. He sang Lupang Hinirang. The room fell silent. Judges leaned forward. Something shifted. His voice filled the space with history, pride, and longing. When he finished, applause erupted, not loud at first, but sincere. A clip of that moment traveled across the internet, crossing oceans and cultures. Soon, an email arrived that made Miguel's hands shake. He was invited to perform on America's Got Talent. America felt overwhelming. The buildings were taller than anything he'd seen. The streets louder than the markets back home. Backstage at AGT, Miguel clutched a small Philippine flag Sofia had sewn for him. When the host asked how he felt, he smiled shyly and said, "I'm nervous, but I'm singing for my country." The audience applauded politely. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, curious but guarded. Then Miguel sang. The first note wasn't powerful. It was pure. It carried every storm his family survived, every night he sang in the dark, every dream he was too afraid to speak aloud.
The audience leaned forward. Some placed hands over their hearts. Simon's expression softened.
By the final verse, people were standing, tears flowing freely.
When Miguel held the last note, steady and fearless, the theater erupted.
Simon stood, wiping his eyes before speaking. He said moments like this were why the show existed, to remind the world of honesty and courage. Miguel didn't win the competition.
But he won something greater.
His performance spread worldwide.
Donations poured in for his family and community.
His father bought a new fishing boat.
Children in his town walked taller. Miguel returned home not as a celebrity, but as hope. Fame brought challenges.
People wanted him to change, to sing different songs, to fit trends.
Online comments were cruel at times.
As he grew older, his voice changed, and fear returned.
He worried he would disappoint everyone.
One night, he shared this fear with his father.
Andres listened quietly and said, "A real voice isn't about staying the same. It's about staying true."
Miguel studied music seriously, learning discipline and patience. He sang at schools, shelters, and disaster relief centers. He used his platform to lift others.
One evening, during a community concert, the power went out. Instead of stopping, Miguel sang without a microphone. Phone lights filled the darkness.
Tears flowed. It felt like coming home, to singing in the dark for comfort. Years later, Miguel returned to the AGT stage as a guest performer.
He wasn't there to shock anymore.
He was there to share growth.
Simon smiled proudly. Backstage, a nervous young contestant told Miguel he was scared. Miguel knelt and said, "So was I." Courage isn't being fearless. It's singing anyway. Miguel later helped build a free music program in his hometown, ensuring children could dream without limits. He learned success isn't loud.
Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and meaningful. Looking back, Miguel understood his story was never about one performance or one judge. It was about staying real in a world that tries to change you.
About honoring your roots while believing you deserve more. If you're watching this and doubting yourself, remember Miguel.
Remember that even the smallest voice can shake the world when it's filled with truth. And if this story inspired you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every voice deserves to be heard, and your support keeps these stories alive. When the final note faded and the audience slowly settled back into their seats, Miguel stood still, almost unsure if it was over. His chest rose and fell as he tried to understand what had just happened.
In that moment, he wasn't thinking about judges or applause.
He was thinking about home, about narrow streets, salty air, and the small wooden house where his journey began. That grounding thought kept him steady as the world around him grew louder. Returning to the Philippines was a reminder of what truly mattered. Life there hadn't magically become easy, but hope now lived in small, powerful ways.
His father repaired fishing nets with renewed determination.
His mother smiled more freely, knowing her son's voice had opened doors that once felt locked forever. Neighbors greeted Miguel not as a star, but as family, proud yet familiar. That love became his anchor. As time passed, Miguel faced the quiet pressure of expectations. People wanted him to recreate that unforgettable moment again and again.
But he learned that magic doesn't repeat itself, it evolves.
His voice matured, his emotions deepened, and his understanding of music changed.
There were days of doubt, days when fear whispered that the world might move on.
On those days, Miguel returned to simple places, the shoreline, his childhood room, the quiet where his voice first found meaning. Miguel chose to sing with purpose. He performed at schools, community gatherings, and charity events where music wasn't entertainment, but comfort. He listened to people's stories and carried them into his songs. Music became a shared language of healing, reminding everyone that they were seen. One evening, during a small outdoor concert, rain began to fall.
Instead of stopping, Miguel continued singing.
The crowd stayed, drenched but smiling, some wiping tears. In that moment, Miguel understood that his journey had never been about perfection.
It was about honesty.
About standing firm even when storms come. If this story touched your heart, remember that your voice matters too. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, Because every story shared keeps hope alive and someone out there may be waiting to hear yours.